No, some I don't know yet, but I'm happy that you joined us in this RESIN project. What I would like to tell you is how we, as the people that have been involved from the beginning onwards in this project, how we see this project and what it is about, of course. And therefore, I start with RESIN in 3 slides. And that slide is called cities. And so that's because we've put cities at the very core of our work. And it's not for nothing that 40 Bilbao, Bratislava are part of our full part and full partner in the RESIN project. That what we would like to develop in this project should be developed with the cities to ensure maximum applicability, not only for these 4 cities, of course, but for the wider group of cities in Europe. The 3 is with RESIN. And the abbreviation stands for resilience and infrastructures. And that's a kind of core of our work, the focus. We're focusing on climate change as a specific aspect of the broad resilience of cities. We're looking very much on cities as dynamic entities and try cities in a very inclusive way. Not only just looking to the built environment or to public spaces, but also including infrastructures as an important part of the framework. And the third word that's important for us all in the RESIN project has to do with harmonization and standardization. We would like to should lead to more harmonized approaches in various cities in Europe, and not only because of the European Commission asked us to do so. It's advantageous for us, for the Commission, if vulnerability assessments would be comparable amongst cities, but also because we think that it's important to have a better grip on harmonized data on, for instance, the essence of adaptations. How to say that, or how can we express that a tree or a park has a certain effect to the urban climate? Can we come to a common language for that? In detail, we started the RESIN project, and many of us, or most of us, are involved and closely involved with city responses to climate change, the development of urban adaptation strategies. And we note that, of course, we see around us more and more of those adaptation strategies appearing, but it's still a rather slow progress. And we noted, and that's my personal experience, for instance, too, I'm from the Netherlands, that the Rotterdam adaptation strategy has nice chapters on first topics and vulnerable factors in the city. It's different chapters, and there seems to be little connection to, say, protecting infrastructures like electricity or transport, and protecting the built-up environment. And we think maybe there's something to win there. For the rest, we all know that everyone is still making his vulnerability assessment and the strategy in a different way. We're all finding out the wheel again. And very little in standardized approaches to different strategies. There's limited comparability between vulnerability assessments between cities, and very, very limited comparability between adaptation options. How can we compare the effectiveness of cooling a roof, buying an air conditioned street. We would like to see if it would be to get a better understanding of what is the impact of adaptation options in a comparable and harmonized way. And in a similar way, we noticed that still the field of benefit is in this world. Simply, we know also that when you're thinking about infrastructures and with people dealing with infrastructures, they're very much focused on what can we do or what can we do to prevent immediate disasters, reduce the impact of extreme weather on infrastructures. And on the other hand, while you're talking to people that are dealing with city planning and adaptation strategies in cities, they're often looking at a far longer time scale and taking a climate change adaptation viewpoint, where you think of what's going to happen on the long term and think of what do I need to do in this city to ensure that this city will still be livable, comfortable, and safe in about 50 years. So these two viewpoints are different and maybe also causing different approach adaptation strategies. We would like to see with the RESIN project if we can bridge between those different approaches and strategies. Are not new. In a way, adaptation science is a new science. Adaptation in urban areas is quite new, but a lot has happened already. And we're doing work by international organizations, by many projects on EU and a national scale. So where we're coming from, and that, we try to use as much as possible and use the useful elements of what has been developed as much as possible. Building on that framework, we like to develop some applicable new tools for cities to be used. Standardization, harmonization is a kind of red line through all these efforts. I'll come to conceptual framework and the city typology in a minute. These are two elements that are kind of basic elements into of the RESIN project and the RESIN outputs. What I'd like to do and build on next would be a kind of standardized approach to risk and vulnerability assessment and providing cities with a kind of standardized pathway through making a risk assessment and providing cities with organized methods, suggestions to deal with the indicators, the maps that come out of such a vulnerability assessment, or that you produce in the course of such a risk and vulnerability assessment. Well, the step when knowing how vulnerable a city is then of course to think about what can I do. In this aspect, we're working on a catalog of adaptation options. Again, as I said, specific stress on increasing the comparability of different adaptation options, as far as we can come, of course. We like to merge all that we develop and do in kind of decision support framework. I don't want to use the term decision support system, because that sounds like very much a computerized system where you put something and something else comes out. It was more a helping tool to guide you through the multitude of approaches and tools that are available. And after having done this, we will also consider, together with the standardization organizations, if parts of the thing we develop would be suited for formal standardization in ISO or SEN, which is the European Standardization Organization's context. Just you quickly to the consortium. We are an Horizon 2020 project. It's logical that we have a number of universities and research institutes in this consortium, amongst others Fraunhofer from Germany, Ignalia from Spain, University of Manchester, University of Bratislava, IVP, which is the engineering school of the city of Paris, of industrial partners, like Siemens and Arcadis. Then is the National Standardization Organization of the Netherlands and our entry into the formal standardization world. It is the IT consulting company supporting us. Unit, an organizational company supporting us. And as I said, very important focus of this project are the four cities that I mentioned before. So, and in the coming webinars, you will meet representatives of these organizations. Comments you, that's speaking about Tier 2 cities. Why are we so happy with you as Tier 2 cities? And have a few cities within the project, but we would, as I said, to develop product services for cities in Europe. And for the Tier 2 cities are as a kind of forum to keep us awake that we're doing the right things for all cities in Europe. And that's your role of guiding us to products that you can use. And that's, yeah, also the second one. Yeah, with you to work with us, and if products that we have developed with our partner cities can also be used in your context. And yeah, please help us with ideas about the different contexts you're working on, the way that you are using a vulnerability assessment. Do you organize it? Do you organize it yourself? Do you contract a consultancy? Are you asking the nearby university? All those considerations are important, and can be important lessons for our project. Not in all of these contacted cities is time and time again that cities learn from each other. And I think that that's also for our Tier 2 an important aspect that we should keep high in all the discussions that we have, that all the moments of contact we create are also a possibility to learn from each other. Well, I would, and now my last slide, say a few words on two things that we've done already. Working with a diverse group of researchers and cities, we felt the need for having a picture, kind of talking picture, to tell us what are we working about? What is this RESIN project about? And well, conceptual framework with its double loop describes that with the left side, the physical urban system where climate is happening, creating a climate risk for a city, which then can implement certain adaptation options and increasing its resilience to withstand further extreme weather circumstances. That's the physical system, but it's intimately linked with the right-hand side, which is the adaptation planning system, where administrators, policymakers are faced with notion of an increased risk because of climate change, and they will assess that risk, map abilities, and on the basis of them make the answer. And that's happening in the circle, where options are chosen, implementation plans are made, and finally that feeds back again into the world of the city, where in the end the implementation actions should not, or the implementation plan should not be something that's only on paper, but really implemented in the real world. So this is a bit our notion of framework we're working with, and the two type of systems, an urban system and an adaptation planning system, that we're looking at. You will see this scheme coming back in future presentations as well. That we developed a city typology, or are developing is the city typology, where the idea is that we would characterize all cities in Europe in a way. Current thinking is that we'll have a kind of layered typology. We'll have a layer for the hazards. These are coastal cities exposed to flooding, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity in a kind of multi-layered typology, so that in the end you would say, okay, my city is part of, say, category 3-4, which stands for a mountainous city exposed to landslides and flash floods, a country or something like that. And yeah, typology, in our view, would help in say the exchange of experiences between cities, but would be for the RESIN project a tool to quickly make, for instance, a selection of adaptation measures that would be suited for a city. Long enough, and it's strange to present without not immediate response. But for and return to the next presentation. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks a lot for presenting the framework of the RESIN project and for highlighting how adaptation is, of course, measures, but also a process that in a way encompasses all of the decisions that are taken and how the RESIN project is underlined that. So the next presentation will be on the vulnerability analysis for infrastructures and areas, and will be delivered by Erich Rohmer of Fraunhofer. I would like to ask participants to, especially in this case, post questions in the chat window during the presentation, because Erich has to leave us a bit earlier. So questions to Erich will not be addressed at the end of the webinar during the question and answer time, but directly after his presentation. So in case you have something you want to ask, just post it in the chat immediately, and Erich will answer after he's finished presenting. So Erich, the floor is...
Thank you, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. In RESIN, I am responsible for the activities in Work Package 2, addressing the vulnerability assessment or analysis, and the methods, or the title of the work package is called Integrated Vulnerability Analysis for Vital Infrastructures and Build-Up Areas. Because this is incredibly long, I have invented an acronym for this, and it's called IVAVIA, which is also quite nice to pronounce. So regarding our place in the RESIN conceptual framework, vulnerability assessment methods are related to the assessment of climate risk, and also provide a first indication of possible additional options. So what about vulnerability assessment in RESIN? 2 years ago, the IPCC has published its latest assessment report, the Assessment Report 5. And this assessment report brought change in paradigm. The respect that vulnerability assessment is now much more risk-oriented in order to harmonize it with risk-oriented assessment approaches in other areas, like in the disaster risk reduction area. The challenge here was to come up and get new definitions for some and working definitions for some of the elements and terms provided by the IPCC AR5, and also include infrastructure, sometimes also termed critical infrastructures. So we did some research regarding the state of the art in vulnerability assessment related to climate change, and found what is called the vulnerability source book. This is a monograph published by the German International Collaboration Society, GIZ, in 2014, the same year as the IPCC AR5 has been published. And vulnerability source book is a modular approach to vulnerability assessment for consequences related to climate change. And the nice thing about this book is it is modular. It is really good work in terms of usability by people who need this type of assessment. But unfortunately, it is still based on the earlier concept of the previous assessment report 4. So it is not yet risk-based. So we decided to use this as basic methodology to have a modular approach in RESIN as well. Change in the respect that we made risk-based and also includes infrastructures. Be aware that we are in close collaboration with the authors of this vulnerability source book and collaborate on further developing this method. Shown in the IPCC Assessment Report 5 and showing what the first intent was regarding the risk orientation. So this shows that 3 core elements, namely vulnerability, exposure, and hazards, overlap and form a risk. I've tried to further elaborate this and optionalize it. And for RESIN, it looks like this. So hazard and the sensitivity and the coping capacity all add up to vulnerability, and vulnerability plus exposure and consequences add up to risk. This is the basic relationships between these elements of that definition, but of course needs more to make that definition. One biggest changes in the concepts of IPCC AR5 was related to exposure. So with new definition, exposure just means the exposed object and the objects, and the objects of analysis, so the objects for which we want to assess the vulnerability. If you look at risk assessment approaches, risk is very often defined the probability of an adverse event times the magnitude of the consequence. And this is also the interpretation that we use in RESIN. And we are currently the vulnerability assessment in a sort of creation or co-development process together with our cities. The basic task in risk-based vulnerability assessment consists of the following steps. Start with identifying a set of climate change-driven relevant scenarios for your city or for your area of investigation. Then identify relevant parameters for all risk elements for each of the scenarios. That means for the hazard, the sensitivity, the coping capacity, and the exposure. With assessing impacts and consequences of climate change-related hazards for each of the scenarios, and then assess the probability of occurrence of these hazards for each of the scenarios. They are in a position to calculate the risk and then compare and rank the scenarios. This is planning the adaptation, namely to plan measures for reducing risk at the following components of the risk: sensitivity, coping capacity, exposure, and impact. I'll show in a minute what you can make of this. So, regarding this modular approach of the vulnerability sourcebook method, it looks like this. The original sourcebook lines 8 modules, starting with preparing the vulnerability assessment. We have decided to include also an initial module, we call it module 0, for selecting hazards and drivers. Now, of the climate change vulnerability studies, we have found that the action of hazards and drivers seem to be assumed as given. So no documentation of the process how the relevant hazards and drivers have been identified. So in the documents that we have studied, we thought it might be a good idea to include this as an explicit step and also document it to further repetitions of the process. If you concept work of RESIN, it's a repeated process over several years. Change will be with us for a very long time, and we assume that we will see repeated cycles of vulnerability assessment, adaptation, changes in climate, and repeated vulnerability assessment and adaptation, and so on. So, we progress in the adaptation of this method to the RESIN requirements. The situation looks like this. So far, we have elected the modules 0, 1, and 2, and are working on finalizing a guideline document, giving practical guidance on how to apply these modules. The version of the guideline document will be in the next couple of days and then distributed to our Tier 1 partners. We are also in the process of applying some of these modules. Specifically, in the last weeks and months, we have performed workshops for developing so-called impact chains. I'll show you in a minute what it means. And we are currently in the process of identifying and selecting indicators. In this webinar, there has been the question from whether we use the Mayer's Adapt reporting indicators, and my answer was that we will include this list in our set of indicators. Gathered for this set of indicators from other partners, from the cities, but also from our partner Technala, who has performed vulnerability assessments in another EU project. And besides finding these first modules, we are also in the process of conceptualizing and realizing the final modules. It means at the end, we will have an idea of how to calculate risk, and the final step then will be presenting the outcomes of vulnerability assessment. And this is one of the most important steps because here you would present the results of the analysts to the political level for getting a decision on how to proceed with adaptation. So just to give you an indication of the steps of the first modules, preparing vulnerability assessment. What do we need? We first start with a precisely formulated set of objectives, overall specific, meet with the key partners and stakeholders. We would also need a clearly defined scope for the spatial, thematic, sectoral, and temporal dimensions of the vulnerability assessment. A list that are to be produced by the vulnerability assessment, and finally, a vulnerability assessment implementation plan that defines the tasks, responsibilities, and timetable for the vulnerability assessment. Because joint tasks by many involved, in this case, the cities, municipal offices, and so on. Developing impact chains. This consists of the following steps: determine the change-related threats or hazards which your system is exposed to, and identification of relevant direct or indirect potential impacts. Then describe what makes your system or area sensitive to the climate change signals. Identify of which coping capacities allow your system or area to handle adverse climate impacts. Now more concrete. When you create an impact chain, you start with defining a combination of hazard, affected, or in this case exposed objects, and then you proceed with assessing impacts and consequences in terms of quality and quantity. To give a very simple example from the Potsdam Institute of Climate Impact Research, if you assess the impact of sea level rise on land, identify that the primary impact would be land loss, but there would be secondary impacts and consequences like rural and urban area damages, loss of agricultural production, and loss of habitable areas, and as a further consequence, migration. Just to give you an idea how this scheme works. A tool from the original vulnerability sourcebook are impact chain diagrams. This is a tool for structuring the ingredients or components of a particular impact chain. It has the basic connections between all these elements, and it prepares the selection of indicators for many of those components. The chain consisted of adding this to risk-based vulnerability assessment and also for integrating critical infrastructures. It's a general scheme of how an impact diagram looks like. As you start with a combination of one of the hazards that are relevant for your case and one of the exposed objects also relevant for your case. You continue with selecting or defining drivers. Drivers are climate-related effects or events that produce the hazard, and there are also so-called stressors, which are non-climatic drivers, could make the situation worse. And on the left-hand side, you have the coping capacity. That means to which extent can your exposed object cope with the hazard, and the sensitivity describing to which extent your exposed object is sensitive to the hazard. And finally, you define the impacts. That means what would be the effects if the hazard hits those objects and produces consequences. I have produced this figure and included the working definition for each of the major terms here in this diagram. And I'm sure that later on the slides will be provided to you in their original format. So far we have tested this tool together with 3 cities, with Manchester, Paris, and Bilbao. And here on this slide you can see which combinations of hazard and exposed object we have investigated. And this process is still ongoing, so we are currently producing more impact chain diagrams. Example elaborated by Bilbao, and it has investigated the impacts of heat waves on the public health. Here you see a couple of drivers and indicators related to them, and a couple of elements or attributes of the coping capacity, of the sensitivity, several indicators for that, and similarly for the impacts on the other side. The here is that it gives you a very overview and structure of all the elements. But it is also a very first idea of what you could do about this. What you, for instance, take measures for increasing the coping capacity. You could take measures for reducing the sensitivity. You choose to mitigate the stressors. That means the non-climatic drivers and reduce influence. And you know the impacts. You could also look at the impacts and try to develop measures to reduce the impacts. So you have 4 areas of action already at this stage of the vulnerability assessment process. So basically the contents of this slide, I proceed with the next one and summarize. So IVAVIA is a modular approach for risk-based assessment of vulnerabilities related to consequences of climate change. It is on the vulnerability source book and structures the analysis of distributed adaptation measures. The co-development process and next steps are as follows. Impact chain diagram scheme is adapted to definitions of the IPCC AR5. The 1 cities are developing impact chain diagrams, and the work package 2 partners work in parallel on completing IVAVIA. We'll have a risk-based vulnerability assessment that is oriented at the ISO norm 31010, which is a general norm on the risk assessment. There are already some national and regional risk assessment processes defined in several EU member states, and we want to harmonize our approach to some extent with these. For your attention.
Thank you, Erich, for your presentation. And as I was saying before, please post your questions to Erich in the chat now, so they can answer directly, because he will have to leave us a bit earlier. Post them to all panelists in chat window. And I already have a question for you, Erich, from Ghent. Maike Beugelmans asks if you can please give examples of relevant parameters for the risk elements of each scenario.
Parameters, you probably mean indicators, or what do you mean?
Well, I will ask Maike to specify your question in the chat. Yeah, I mean, she hasn't answered yet, but assuming she meant indicators, Erich, you can start answering the question.
Yes, I've seen this one example from Bilbao, where we have already defined a set of indicators for each of the elements of sensitivity, coping capacity, drivers, and impacts. And in the same way, we would do this for the other examples. So we have more than half a dozen such impact chain diagrams, and we will elaborate more. Yeah, I can say at the moment.
Thanks a lot. If there are any, yeah, Maike says, okay, thanks. So you understood the question correctly. So there seem to be no other questions at the moment. And so for participants, please take into account that this is your first contact with the RESIN Consortium, but of course there will be numerous occasions to exchange opinions and post questions to the RESIN Consortium. So in case out, you can also write to us. You have my email address, and I can then post the question to Erich via email. Then I would like to thank you, Erich, for the presentation, and I would like to move forward to Mendizabal from Tecnalia, who will introduce Tecnalia's work in the framework of the RESIN project. Can you?
Alberto.
Hi, Marlene. Hi.
Well, I would like to explain what we are doing in work package 3 of the RESIN project, which is and the last to propose a project on the most suitable implementation strategy.
Madeleine, there was a problem with the audio. We couldn't hear you for a little while, so if you could just repeat the last couple of sentences. Sorry.
Okay, sorry for that. The third aim we have in the work package 3 is to propose some methods to decide on the most suitable implementation strategy. So these three aims we developing the work in this work package, and the first task is related to the adaptation option library. In the library, what we have is adaptation options which are related to different hazards, occurring drought and heat wave hazards. We are collecting adaptation options which are they have different classification. So we are collecting adaptation options related to structural and physical adaptation option, also social adaptation option and institutional adaptation option. So in this library, we are collecting information from literature, and we are collecting information like effectiveness of the adaptation option and also cost efficiency. We are doing with this information is we are analyzing all this data in order to make the effectiveness and the cost efficiency data comparable among them. We are analyzing in which unit they are measured this effectiveness, and also which are the parameters used to represent the result in each study. For example, we have some studies which give us the effectiveness in sense of reduction of temperature thanks to the implementation or the analysis of one option, and they give us the reduction in air temperature. We are collecting all this information, and we are comparing with other studies in order to see how we can make them comparable. And then we are also gathering information related to the characterization of the option. We are collecting some general description of the adaptation option, like the scale of the implementation of the option, or the timing, or which are the responsible stakeholders that are implementing this adaptation option, or other kind of information like financing and information related to the adaptation option. We are collecting this information because at the end we want to use this information to filter searching into the library. So this information will be important for the following step of the work package 3. That we have from the adaptation library. Here you can see some heat-related adaptation option, And we are trying covering all different kind of adaptation options like green, cool materials, or traffic reduction. As you see, we have a different number of entries or different number of studies. We are giving us some kind of information related to the adaptation option. So there are some adaptation options that are not have not a lot of references. We also would like to include it into database to have some kind of representativeness and to see that more adaptation options than the ones that are more studied. In this, we have also the examples of the cost efficiency information that we are collecting from each adaptation option. So we have for different type of hazard, for example, for flooding and also for drought and heat waves. We have different kind of adaptation options and are collecting the cost and benefit of those adaptation options from the literature, including all this information into the library. In this stage is we are developing this library, which includes a lot of literature reference and different type of action option. But at the end, what we want to do is to create a user-friendly database in which we want to develop some kind of interface to help this searching or filtering process. And we are keen on giving some kind of way of a simple searching or advanced searching. So the objective is to give the possibility to include some like hazard and feature-based solution, for example, and this will be the way to filtering the adaptation option from the library. And we want to give the opportunity to extract also additional information, as we saw, like harmonized or comparable effectiveness and cost efficiency data, but also the other information that are the general information of the adaptation option and some kind of information related to implementation. At the end, we want to give the opportunity to develop a reporting or a document, a separate document with those extracted information. This is what we want to do, and still we are working on that, and we will see what is the end product. We have three objectives in this work package. The second one will be to analyze which kind of methods we can use to prioritize the adaptation option that we prioritize for the library. So at second step, we are analyzing which is the best prioritization method to be used in this context. So we're going to give some notes and we are going to define some criteria to be used in these methods. And what we are doing is we are defining several steps that we need to follow in order to prioritize the adaptation option, and we want to link this step, this prioritization with the adaptation library. So why we are including more information in the library in order to extract from library the information related to the criteria we select for prioritization, for prioritize. So we are going to find together with the local team which are the main criteria we want to use to price, but we want to extract this information from the library, and then we need to weight or give some kind of importance of those criteria to the local team to have the ranking of the option or the measures. So kind of results we are going to get from prioritization will be it's a list of ranking of the option, but also we want to give the information of how much is contributing each criteria into the ranking. So at the end, this information can help to the local authority take decision on which are priorities selected by them. A last step, the last aim was to a little bit how we organize all this information in a logical way, and we are using, or we want to analyze further the adaptation pathway approach, because an approach which is a flexible approach, and we see that it's good to have kind of approach in these climate change issues when we have a lot of uncertainty in this process. So the pathway approach can help us organizing all the information. And this pathway design, we are going to use the information elaborated in Work Package 2, and the risk information will help us identifying the adaptation option from the library. And we are going to extract from the library the information of effectiveness or cost efficiency. We're going to do this prioritization exercise. Then the last step will be to organize the adaptational option into our map and be at the end the pathway. So we need to include the option in a roadmap, depending on the effectiveness they have, and we to organize them in the time period. How will look like this pathway? It's something similar to this graph, in which you can see the effectiveness of different adaptation options, and can draw the line or the roadmap in which we can start implementing adaptation option, because they can reduce the risk. But in the future, we will need to activate new adaptation option in order to keep the risk below the threshold, and we can create adaptation pathway to help taking the decision of from which adaptation option we need to start, and then which adaptation option we need to activate in the future in order to keep the risk below the acceptable threshold. At the end, all this information is going to be linked with the Work Package 6, with the decision support system, because at the end, the Work Package 3 is covering the step of identifying and selecting the adaptation option, and gives the initial information for develop the adaptation strategy, like is the adaptation pathway. That's all from Work Package 3. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Mayalen, for your presentation. Also, Mayalen, please post your questions in the chat, and we'll take them at the end during the question and answer session. So, Mayalen has already mentioned the decision support framework, as Peter said correctly in the beginning, and this is what we call Work Package 6 to do. So I would take this hook to give the floor to Art Neuwenhuis. I hope I'm not mispronouncing too much, to get through then the activities of Work Package 6. Albert, hear us?
You? I hope you can hear me too.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I will tell you something about the goals, the approach, and how they are going to reach the goals in work package 6. First of all, what we do in package 6 is making an e-guide. And e-guide, in essence, is a comprehensive support tool supporting your urban climate adaptation. And that means that we have to do several things. We have to create content for supporting your adaptation process. You have to create a platform that you can use for accessing and using this content, and you should realize that the platform will give access to the tools you just were presented by the other parties. So, insight on what it encompasses. Decision framework is what it says. It is a framework. It's structure that helps you doing all the steps that needs to be done in an adaptation plan. It consists of 4 phases. Some of the phases were presented earlier. Assessing of the climate risk has much to do with what Eric was presenting. Developing adaptation options and prioritizing adaptation options. Madden talked us through us, and she told a little bit about how that could be transformed into an implementation plan. The framework is much more comprehensive than that. Actually, under these 4 phases are a lot of sub-phases and sub-steps. This is a little bit too complicated to get into now. It's just to show you that support you in each of the steps, those phases. You should realize that while this is a complicated framework, it's just a framework. It's something to hang up all the steps on. The framework is not to be used as a prescriptive flow chart or one-size-fits-all solution, or you should start with step 1 and end with the last step. This framework is something to present all the steps and to be used as a checklist and a guidance in your own process, and not to be prescriptive in any way. The guide that we are developing will be an online tool that can be used by all to access and use the decision support systems, all the tools in there, and to access the supportive steps and text that are in there. We developed the first idea on the structure of information and what the platform will look like, but it developed in a co-creation process, which means that not all functionality is done at this time, and it will be developed in a co-creation process together with end users. With the co-creation process of developing the e-guide, on the side we have the input from the work packages of RESIN. We have the typology of work package 1. We have vulnerability and risk that are developed in work package 2. We have adaptation options in work package 3. In work package 4, there is the interaction with the cities, which might turn out datasets. And we have work package 5, which can provide input on standardization and certification. This is expertise that will be put into the e-guide, but that's only half of the story, because the other side of the e-guide is combining the expertise with the practice. and that means that we need a lot of input from the city cases on the use of the tools. How are they used? Are there useful or are there things to be enhanced? So we need feedback. We need feedback on the supportive content, and we need feedback on the use of the platform. And also, we think there might be expertise and content in the cities which might enhance the e-guide, the e-guide for other users. So that's also something that we use as input. And together we have the expertise coming out of the consortium, and we have the expertise and the use of the tools coming out of the cities. And together they will make a tool that's really useful. The process that we intend to follow consists of several elements. We'll have webinars. This is the first one. We'll have process management workshops, knowledge transfer workshops, have thematic workshops. I will tell a little bit about that in a few seconds. And last of all, we have a very close cooperation with the city of Manchester, will act as a direct partner, feeding back on the development of the e-guide. That the webinars and the workshops were explained already earlier in webinar, so I want to devote a few words on the thematic workshops. Basically what it is that the knowledge and information that is available at cities which might help other cities, we identified in the interactive process we follow. And once we identify that there is a sort of information on, for example, how to involve stakeholders, how to tell the findings of a research to a wider audience, things that are difficult in the actual execution of an urban adaptation process, coming from practical difficulties, have a workshop around it and gather all the experiences and the knowledge of cities involved in that particular thematic problem, and gather it and work it into the e-guide. So we plan to have several workshops that gather that information and make it available for the users. This process is primarily aimed at the first cities. The second-tier cities are involved in these steps. In some of these steps, they are involved more indirectly. Some of these steps, they are involved directly and part of the workshops and part of the webinars. Okay, trying to. Yeah. Then it's about the planning for this year. So that's short-term planning. First of all, what we will do is align the details of our planning with the other partners, align it also with the planning of the Tier 1 cities. We'll have webinars. This is the first one. Those webinars will get more information on particular needs and challenges of the cities, and this is part of what I described of the co-creation process that shapes the e-guide. For now, we have an intermediate version of the e-guide online to support this co-creation process, and which will lead to a final version of the e-guide in all functions will be available. 2017, we will further fill the e-guide. We will finalize the e-guide, the platform. We'll have process management workshops in May and November. We will have, we expect about 4 thematic workshops, and we will discuss particular subjects that arise in practice, and we will have webinars. And this basically concludes my overview of what we're planning to do in work package 6.
Thanks a lot, Albert, for introducing work package 6, and I will give then an overview on which activities are mostly relevant for Tier 2 cities after the question and answer. After the question and answer slot is right now, so I would like to ask all of the participants to post questions to all panelists in the chat. Also questions regarding the presentation of Technada and of Albert, but also the initial presentation of Peter Bosch. In general, on the project, if you have doubts, something that you would like to see answered, please write so in the chat. Yeah, and just in the meantime, of course, the presentations that we have delivered will be shared with you, so you will have also a chance to go through the materials in more detail, and maybe questions will arise then, so maybe then you can post via email, but still wait a couple of minutes to see if anybody has a question right now. That is not the case. Okay, in that case, I'll just continue by giving you an account on what's coming next with regard to the Tier 2. So all of the activities that I'm introducing are already contained in the concept paper about the Tier 2 that all of you should have received. So next year, what will happen? We have so more or less 3 webinars that essentially to this webinar will serve as a moment for us to communicate with Tier 2 cities to explain products of the project, but also maybe to dig deeper into the experience of one of the Tier cities, so as to get closer. This contact we can have every 2nd or 3rd month together in order to keep communicating about the project and to allow you to find out more about it. Then there will be these knowledge transfer workshops, and as I introduced before, there would be 2 of them, but 2 city groups at the time will participate in these knowledge transfer workshops. So for each Tier 1 and Tier 2 city, there will be only 1 knowledge transfer workshop that they will attend. They will take place in one of the Tier 1 cities, and we are currently deciding upon a location. And as soon as we have that, we will also start a doodle and share it with the 2 cities that are part of those groups that will be involved, so that we can find a final date for the knowledge transfer workshops. These will be anyway, in general terms, will take place between late summer and maybe after the summer break. Then we will have also 1 stakeholder dialogue per two similarly to the knowledge transfer workshops, and these are events that will happen a bit later in the process, and that we will use to talk about the RESIN project a bit more, and also share experiences with additional stakeholders, additional to the tier 1 and the tier 2. So this will be also the link between the tier 1, the tier 2, and then an ideal third tier of dissemination of the project, where we share what we've done with a wider audience. Yeah, this is just a rough timeline that you should have also received before, so I will not spend time on it, but just gives a rough count on when things will happen. Of course, minor changes might still take place, but this should be more or less the milestones of our process. And yet now coming to next steps. So in terms of next steps, we will decide upon topics and dates for the next webinars of next year. And, we will communicate them to the tier cities. As I was saying, this can revolve on particular topics or particular city cases. And of course, I also encourage the tier 2 cities, if you today had an idea or an impression of something that you would like to see in a way explained better, or to dig deeper into it, please feel free to write me an email about that, and we can see to embed that into one of the next webinars. As I was saying, exact dates and locations for the 2 knowledge transfer workshops will be selected and communicated to you so that we can mark them in our calendars and set the date. And then this last point is written in blue because it is not one of the activities that are directly related to the tier 2, but I would like to introduce it. So our standardization partner, NEN, the Dutch Standardization Institute, is currently carrying out a survey to understand which standards cities commonly use in their operational. So they asked us to put them in contact with the tier 2 cities for the tier 2 cities to fill out the questionnaire. Of course, this is a voluntary activity, but the project would really benefit a lot from you hang out with that. So you will receive a separate communication about that in the next future. I would like to hand over quickly to my colleague Clara Grimes, who is our communication officer here at IKILE, to tell us a bit about this opportunity that we're giving to tier 2 cities to tell us their story. Clara?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So tier 2 cities, we'd like to offer you the communication platforms through the RESIN project to showcase your work in adaptation and to show how you're making an effort to adapt to climate change for your citizens. So there's a few different ways that you can do that. If you go to the website, it might be interesting anyway for you to have a look at the city profile of the city that you've been matched with. So if you're scrolling around the website, and I already have a page for our tier 2 cities, so you can see yourselves there listed on the website. So have the opportunity to have that link to the newsroom or news stories. I would like to invite you to contact me with your ideas for how you'd like to present yourself and how to tell your adaptation story. It could either be by summarizing the kind of climate change challenges that you're entering in your city, or risks that have come up that citizens might be worried about, any special or distinctive features of your city as it relates to climate change, and what kind of change you'd like to see in your city. Why are you participating in RESIN? What are your aims through that? What will you achieve by participating in RESIN? So that would be one approach, like reflecting on your context, your city context, and we build a little story about the past, present, and future of your city, and what participating in RESIN will bring to your citizens as a benefit. Another approach would be to take a particular incident that's maybe newsworthy in your city, like a flood or heat waves over the summer, or maybe it's not snowing yet in your city when it's this time of year for it to be snowing, or kind of events that affect citizens, particularly floods. We've noticed our citizens get very worried about, and it's always good to be able to show them that you're taking steps to address that. So you could write a little story or just tell me your ideas, just a couple of bullet points of the situation is in your context, and then we build a story around that and post it on the RESIN website and also disseminate it through RESIN and ICLE channels. Also translate it into your own local language and send it as a press release so we can coordinate on that. The third approach would be to take a specific city development or project or new infrastructure that you've put in place. Maybe it's a new green roof in some part of the city, maybe you've planted trees, or maybe there's some kind of nature-based solution that's been implemented to address flooding. I would like to showcase that and show the link between maybe climate change related event in your city recently, and show link to help citizens understand the connection between the infrastructure that they see happening in the city and climate change affected related risks. So there are 3 options. We'll also circulate them to you by email after this after the webinar, and you can approach me with your ideas, and I'll support you in developing a press release and also to post it on the RESIN website. It can be very short, just a few words, and a great opportunity to help your citizens understand how the RESIN project or how your participation in it is helping make the city more resilient and adapt to climate change.
Thank you, Sarah. And yes, indeed, it will be interesting to share this information with Tier 2 cities. So this is really an opportunity that we're offering Tier 2 cities. So we invite you, of course, to profit from that opportunity. So it seems that we have come to the end of this webinar. I'd like to thank you all for attending. I would like the RESIN colleague to thank the RESIN colleagues for having presented today, and also I would like to make you aware that not only the slides that we presented will be available to you, but also we have recorded the webinar, so the webinar recording will also be made available so that you can to the parts that you are interested in. So I would like to wish a great day to everybody. We'll be in touch in the upcoming weeks for the activities. Thank you, and talk soon. Bye, everybody.
Thank